I have a situation with a specific client that's going through an immense feeling of guilty, not regret. She doesn't regret, but she feels guilty. So the story is that she went to divorce, and she's the one who wanted to have divorce. So she says he's narcissistic, and he has to look good. So he's making her look bad, so he looks good. And in a certain way, she feels guilty for not revealing how bad he was throughout the marriage. She was trying to hide all the time. And now when she bailed out, she's the bad one because he's always the nice facade.
Sure, yeah.
And she's very kind, the kind of person that sells and want everything to go right. So she didn't want to show. So that's and then of course that has deep roots in childhood and stuff.
Yes.
But basically, I'd like to know, like, wow, if I can help her to release that feeling that everything is okay, that at least she's not living that situation anymore, and let's go forward and move on. If I have a magic wand, I could, but the feeling is, so there's deep roots. And then that's why I thought, like, maybe Terry, we have a great idea.
Well,
right, for your experience.
Well, it's so interesting that you bring up the whole area of narcissism, because that is something that I grew up with. And it's something that it took me a long time to understand. And, I understood what it was before I had a name for it. And once I found out that there was a name for it, I felt like I wasn't crazy, because people who are narcissistic, who really have the personality disorder, can be very two-faced, and like much like what you were talking about with your client, where they show one face to the world and then they show a different face to those close to them. And it really comes from, in their case, a feeling of unworthiness that they try to fill up with other people's adulation and, using other people and that sort of thing. And there is sort of a codependent dance that can happen also, where you have people who are, if we're going to talk about, the ELI or the energy leadership levels, people who have a lot of level 4, they want to help these people. They can see that they're in pain and they want to help them. But what happens is that, those narcissists, they've got a very extreme coping mechanism, and they really use other people. And, I would imagine in her case that, she probably didn't want to reveal, how bad her husband was, because she was trying to fix it.
Right.
She was trying to fix it because she probably has a high level 4. And then when she couldn't fix it, maybe there were feelings of shame, like there was something wrong with her, that she picked this guy, or that or that she allowed him to treat her that way. And so now that she's talking about it, because he wants to protect himself, he's trying to shame her and make her feel guilty like that. He wants to look as good as he possibly can. So if she's being honest about what really happened, he's going to try to malign her so that people don't believe her. That's just part of the whole dance of narcissism. And I've done a lot of research on it, just because of my own personal family experiences, that, I grew up with people in my family like that. And it was very puzzling and confusing and hurtful.
Then what happens is that people they're outside start judging, and she feels judged, and then she feels like, okay, so now it's my fault. I did something wrong, when she's just trying to escape and not suffer, And when it goes for a long time, like this, we're talking about like over 30 years relationship.
Yeah, sure.
The father of the kids and everything. So
she's going to have to work a little harder to overcome what her natural tendency is, which is to be very caring and give people the benefit of the doubt, because he's going to be very manipulative around that situation, just because that's the way he copes with life, is to use other people to get his needs met. I've mentored and coached many people, some people in my family, about how to overcome some of those issues. And I think that the number one thing to realize is that it's not your fault. Your reality is your reality, and you're allowed to speak your truth. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't, other people don't need to accept it. And the more that, I kind of feel like the more you talk about it, or the more you write about it, or you find people who are empathetic and maybe have been through it. Like when I was dealing with it personally, this was back in the early days of the internet, but I found an online support group, and I did a lot of writing about my own experiences, and also helped other people who were dealing with things to make them realize it wasn't their fault, and that to kind of reframe their situation so that they could realize that if they saw a friend of theirs or a child or somebody that they cared about going through what they were actually going through, they would be outraged. But when it came to themselves, they just kind of put up with it, right? And so if you can reframe it to think like, how would I react to somebody very close to me that I cared a lot about going through this, they can start and use those same feelings of protection for themselves, that you're allowed to, I posted something on LinkedIn today, or actually it was an article that I posted about how to, it's called Retire Your Cape, Overcoming Superman Syndrome. Mm-hmm. And somebody said, well, if you're high level 4, how do you do this? And I just reminded her that, level 4 is also about self-care.
Yeah.
And, so if you can care for others, you can care for yourself. But many people just get in the habit of only caring for others, and they allow themselves to be drained and depleted, and then they're exhausted, and then they have to do something, really drastic to escape that terrible feeling.
How interesting. Yeah. I hear you saying like, so writing can be a good way of just taking from the head to the paper and detach from the thing. What I say too is like, nothing better than time, because time will put things into perspective and will heal. But the thing is like, as you wait for the time to heal, you will still have to deal with those feelings that wake you up at night. She can sleep and she feels like, this overwhelm of a very painful feeling. And then even though she's now in a happier place, this is like a ghost that hunts,
oh, absolutely. I can imagine that. Yeah, I can imagine that there's probably a lot of, grieving that would have to go on, right? Because if she was married to that man for 30 or 40 years, that's the father of her children. I'm sure that there were happy times when they were together, and that she had to walk away from that. And so there, it's grieving something that was left behind, and she may feel a little selfish because, maybe her children feel hurt, or obviously her ex-husband's not happy about it. But, it's just like processing those feelings and realizing that you can feel sad, but also feel happy and satisfied also. It's a dichotomy that, it's not all black and white. There's areas of gray, and recognizing that, like, I feel sad that I don't live in the big house and we're not going on the nice vacations anymore, or whatever it is, we're not having the big family Christmases anymore. But I feel happy because I can do what I want to do without being criticized, and that I can really be my own person and not have to adapt my thoughts or the way I look or what I do to somebody who's very critical and judgmental of me.
Right. Basically recognizing the pain element of that choice of separating, but also embrace the gain of, the whole new freedom.
Yes.
And I've been coaching her, but I've also recommended her therapy. Although she's a functional person right now, she's remarried, she's in a happy place with this new husband, but even though she still can't sleep at night. So would you believe that therapy would be better for her? Approach?
Yeah, I think I definitely did a lot of therapy whenever I was when I discovered it and figured out, okay, how how were my coping mechanisms of having to deal with that, growing up with that kind of narcissism in my family? How did that cause me to have coping mechanisms that did not work for me once I got out into the real world? You know, there were beliefs that I had that limited me. You know, there were certain things that, you know, I avoided some of the conflict that was in my family, but then that hurt me when I got out into the work world, to avoid things rather than just dealing with them. You know, so it really is like kind of evaluating it, like really looking inside and seeing what's going on. You know, I mentioned earlier about that online help group. I feel like what helped me more than anything was helping other people. You know, that there were a lot of people that were, and there's actually one, I can send you the link to it on Facebook after we get off the call, but I can't remember exactly what the name of it is, but it's people dealing with narcissism in their lives. And, you know, people will post things, and, you know, just reading and responding to the posts, it's helped me a lot, because it was almost easier for me to help other people than it was for myself. But once I did help somebody else, and then I would say, oh, well, if that's good for them, that's good for me too. You know, so it just, I don't know, there's just something about examining your own situation, but through somebody else's experience, that makes it easier to recognize and become aware of. And then also to realize, well, if I'm saying that they should do it this way, maybe I should do it this way too.
In the group support, like knowing that you're not alone, that you're not the only one going through this. There are other people, and seeing others, you see like, okay, you know, there are others in the same situation as I am.
Yes.
The step to get out of this. And it's normal when we, you know, make a choice that we have some loss, but the overall that I'm much happier now. This was a very wise choice, and I'm responsible for my actions, and time will heal. Time will take care of all these.
If those feelings are just locked up in a box and never looked at, that I don't know that time's going to help. I think that, but I also know that those feelings can be very strong, and they can be scary. And sometimes just doing it, you know, a little bit at a time, you know, doing it at a pace that is tolerable is important. Not to let yourself get overwhelmed, you know, because I think a lot of times people don't go there because it's too scary, or they've been programmed to react in a certain way, and they don't feel like they're allowed to say no, or set a boundary, or put themselves first, you know, to be happy for themselves. I actually have coached a lot of people that put everybody else first before themselves, but they're very unhappy, and they're tired and stressed and exhausted.
And this sort of pattern may have roots in the early childhood, where
absolutely.
You always want to be the kind one, not to upset the teacher, not to upset, you know, maybe you were bullied when you were a child, and then you bottle those feelings, and then you develop a pattern of being the nice one and the kind one, so that you don't upset the others. And then you make it your self-fulfilling prophecy, like attracting now a husband that will play the, you know, the story, and you keep on repeating those stories until you clear the pattern, the program.
It's really uncanny how people who are narcissistic can spot the ones that they can take advantage of. You know, somebody who has someone who is really narcissistic and is, you know, they don't think about this consciously, but because they kind of have a hole, you know, they've got a need that, and it's sort of like a bottomless need that they want to fill. They try to fill it with other people, and so they look for people who have, and it's very unconscious, but people who don't have strong boundaries. They do not want people who are going to say no to them. They do not want people who are going to say, well, how about me? You know, they don't want that. They want somebody who's like, oh, you're the greatest, and let me help you, and let me do all this for you. And they're like, oh, great. This is somebody that I can take advantage of. And then also, I think what can happen with people who are very giving is that they They don't look for evidence that there's going to be reciprocity. They just assume that there's going to be reciprocity. But it's almost like they may be too far into the relationship before they realize that there's never any reciprocity. You know, because in a normal, loving, you know, equal relationship, you know, like if your spouse is sick, you're going to take care of them. But then when you're sick, they're going to take care of you. But in, you know, these more codependent relationships, sometimes it's like only one person is the caregiver and the other person's sort of the taker. So that's exhausting.
Right. Okay. So then, Terry, I hear what you're saying regarding how can you cope with this and heal from this. You said like get in a support group.
Mm-hmm.
Then you said write about it. So as you write, you can reframe and you can get a different perspective that you are able to see. And then as you help others, they're going through a similar situation, you also have a feedback, a return for, okay, so now this is also good for me. Yes?
Yeah. And I would also suggest there's a lot of good books that are, you know, they're not too heavy. They're, you know, it's like popular psychology. It's not like super heavy, you know, technical books on narcissism and also borderline personality disorder, which can be really similar. I did a lot of reading on both of those topics, and that helped me really understand why, you know, the people I knew were like that, what had probably happened to them in their early childhood, which helped me also reframe in a way that I could have compassion, even though I knew I still had to keep good boundaries. I could have compassion because initially I was just very angry and I kind of felt like, you know, this person was doing it on purpose. But the reality was that she had probably been, you know, wounded in very early childhood, and this was her way of coping. And she just treated everyone around her this way, you know, throughout her life, and it was really destructive.
Yeah. One thing that I also would like to also, the narcissist or the person that we are saying, oh, he's a narcissist or he has a borderline personality, also has a story that was created in his mind that, you know, that's the way he reacts to life, is the way he becomes. And most of the time, these people are not aware that they are doing what they do, right? So they also need healing and some sort of compassion, because I don't believe it's like the evil in them creating this, because they are also lost and don't know how to find attention that they need, and they learn this mechanism and they play them out. So by knowing this, it also gives us that like a sort of a compassion in a way that, okay, he doesn't know better, you know, and I don't need to be with this person.
Right.
Sort of like, you know, he must have reasons deep rooted in
absolutely. There is a reason. It's serving him to act like that. But, you know, I think the trap that people can fall into is that they think it's up to them to fix that other person.
Right.
It's funny, the realization that I came to in my life when I was dealing with this person was that I didn't break her, and so it's not up to me to fix her. Right. You know, and because I tried for a very long time, and I really sacrificed a lot of my own self to try to please her and to try to fix her and to care for her so that she would care for me. And that never happened, and it never will happen unless that person goes and gets, you know, especially if they're really are diagnosed with borderline or narcissistic personality disorder, they really need the care of a psychiatrist. You know, so just your normal person in their life, even though you may have a lot of compassion and want to help them, it's beyond the ability of somebody close to do that. And it's actually dangerous, I think, because you know, you have a lot of compassion, you want to go and help them, but you will end up getting used and you'll end up coming out the other end exhausted and feeling terrible.
Exactly. Yeah. Wow, that's awesome. Thank you, Terry, so much. Usually I end the videos with like a quote or something. Do you have any quote you'd like to share?
Oh gosh. I'm the worst whenever I'm on the spot, but I guess the one that I just said, I mean, this is one that I made up, but you know, I didn't break her, so I don't have to fix her. You know, it's just
that one.
It's okay to take care of my own needs, that I don't have to put other people's needs first.
Terry, thank you so much for all that you said. I know that's going to help so many people. It was a pleasure talking with you today.
Oh, Rosane, it was great talking with you also. Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.